Good evening. You're listening to the Friday Sports Show on 94.4 FM, Salford City Radio, with your host, Jimmy Petruzzi, bringing you home on a Friday evening. Today we've got a really special guest who's going to give us a really interesting insight into the world of professional football at various levels, but also you're probably wondering what do footballers do at the end of their career, and what are some of the trials and tribulations and high moments they go through. And we've had this perception of professional football we've sort of seen in recent weeks, and congratulations to Salford on going into the English Football League. That's tremendous news, and we're obviously all happy about that because Salford is a sporting city. We've got some great athletes in the area and great representatives of sporting football and rugby league, obviously, and other sports too. So, really happy for Salford and the fans and the town. So it'll be interesting to see how they get on next year. But we've got this perception of professional football. We've got an abundance of clubs in the area, not too far. We've got City, obviously, not too far away. Manchester United, not too far away. Manchester United probably underachieved this season. City, well, they've had a great season, and obviously with Pep Guardiola at the helm, they're going from strength to strength. But we're going to hear an insight. The goal of the show is to bring you all the local news, but also give you some news from far afield and get a perspective from outside the area as well as inside the area too. So we've got an interesting guest, Drewe Broughton. Welcome to the show. Great to have you on board.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me.
No, it's fantastic to have you on board, and you sort of mentioned there about obviously football at the highest level, and yourself, Drewe, you've had an interesting career in the game, and things could have been different, I guess, in one sense. You could have easily probably been the sort of players that play at the very highest level, but as I said, you obviously had a good career, and that's for sure. But can you tell us a bit about your football career for the listeners sort of wondering what it's like to play in various leagues, and just tell us a bit of insight into your own career and how things went?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think it's a long story, so I'll try and condense it. I mean, like many kids, 8 years of age, playing football every night, friends against the wall at home, loving playing, loving watching the game. What am I, 40 now, so I was inspired by probably Italian 90 around that point, and the start of the Premier League 1990-91. And then just got picked up playing for my Sunday team, 9 years of age, a local scout from Norwich City. So I was going to centres of excellence twice a week in the evenings, between the ages of kind of 10 and 14. Then at 14, and then travelling every school holiday. We'd be playing tournaments all over Europe at that time. It was fantastic, actually, the way Norwich dealt with the youth, and great exposure. We were in Sweden, Denmark, Norway, Italy, playing tournaments all over, and that was great. And then, schoolboy, 14 to 16, then it became a little more serious, travelling up to Norwich on Saturdays to play games on Sunday mornings against all the other sides, Leicester City, Nottingham Forest, Man United, so you'd play. And then at 16, the option to leave school and give it a go, which I did, and broke into the first team after 18 months at Norwich. I was quite prolific in the youth team. We had a very strong side. I think eight of the 20 trainees went on to play 15 years plus, from Craig Bellamy to Rob Green, the goalkeeper, Darren Kent, Adrian Forbes. So a really strong side. We won a lot of stuff as a youth team. I broke into the first team, making my debut at Crystal Palace with Craig Bellamy. We were kind of front two all the way up from 10 to 18. Played 10, 12 games in the first team, scored in my full debut at Wolves, was part of the England under-20 initial squad for the World Youth Cup. It would have been that era with Carragher, who else was in that? Heskey, Kieran Dyer, around that. And so everything was going brilliantly. Signed a 3-year contract at Norwich, 3-year deal with Adidas. So there I am at 18. I guess, if I was coming through now, I'd probably be a millionaire by 18 if I was doing that kind of thing. So forgetting all that, broke into the first team. I then started to struggle because I'm a deep lad. I'm intelligent. I put a lot of pressure on myself. I was always, remember being a kid, I was never happy with just competing. It was, I had to win. Anything other than winning is not good enough. So for myself as a centre forward, as a big centre forward, I'd measure myself myself when I'd have to win 9 out of 10 headers, and have to hold the ball up every time, and I'd want to score every game. So anything less than that was a failure. And so I was driving myself to it, and I put a lot of pressure on myself, and I'd overanalyse. So by 18, 19, even though I broke into the team in this blaze of glory, I couldn't possibly find consistency, because I'd put so much pressure on myself. I'm very sensitive, so any kind of body language from coaches, any little words of negativity that, you've got to score today, you haven't scored for 3 games, that would start affecting me. So before I know it, I'm 20 years of age then. I'd left Norwich, joined Peterborough United on a contract, and I'm now on the bench at Peterborough United, struggling to even control the football. Like, it's going under my foot, bouncing off me. Confidence gone. 21, I'm then on loan into non-league. So this is 3 years, 3 years from being on that plane with England in the first team at Norwich City, and I'm now on the bench, or I'm now on loan in non-league, trying to get some kind of momentum going. So that fallout they talk about between 18 to 21, I can fully relate to it. I'm very blessed. A mentor came into my life, then a family friend, and someone to talk to. He never could fully unlock the potential in me, but without doubt, there's no way I'd have played at 33 without him. I think I'd have been another statistic by 22 in non-league. But just being able to talk to someone about how I felt, and all of a sudden, I went to non-league, banged in a load of goals. Kidderminster Harriers were in the Football League then. Jan Mulby, ex-Liverpool player, he signed me back into the Football League, and then it started then. I scored goals at Kidderminster, moved to Southend, and I went on and then and represented a load of clubs in League 1, League 2. So but that was the career. He constantly searching for that player within, which I probably found out of nearly 600 matches. I probably found my true self, my true potential, 5%. So maybe 40 matches.
Wow, that's a really interesting story. It's fascinating, Drew, because one of the points you've made there is obviously players get released generally around about, say, 18 years of age, 17, 18 years of age, and we know that physically and mentally maturation doesn't happen until early to mid-20s. So, we've seen the likes of Vardy and players who sort of come back into the professional game after going into non-league, but obviously that's far and few in between. And do you think yourself, what can clubs do, what can the system do to ensure that players who develop a bit later have that chance to sort of shine? Because sometimes you think they make a decision on players and you think, well, I know it's not easy because obviously you can only sign so many players. I've been in the situation myself as a performance coach in a football club, and you want to sign everybody. It's a tough decision to make, to let people go. But what can they do in terms of giving players a chance to just develop a little more, another league, another? What can be done, do you think, if anything?
Loads can be done. For me, the solution's fairly simple. But like any simple solution, simplicity is genius, and it is genius. Because it's not about loan spells. I look after 8 players today. I'll go into my job today. I look after 8 players between the ages of 17 and 23. The 23-year-old I've been working with since he's 18, so 5 years. And all these guys, 4 of them are at top 4 clubs in the Premier League. The other ones are dotted around Premier League, top Championship clubs. And some of those guys have been out on loans, 4 or 5 loans. So loans don't guarantee it. I had a load of loans myself when I was struggling at Norwich. And they were like, well, where's this guy gone? 6 months on from blazing into the scene, they were struggling. I went on loan to Wigan. And but all that was just relocating my anxiety. So let's move my lack of confidence 200 miles north in a tougher environment. Let's drop you in there. And then the old adage is, well, it's survival of the fittest. Well, hang on a minute. How do we determine that? I look at some of the guys I work with. If we're talking about, I don't buy into this millennial stuff. I don't wash with me. These guys are fierce competitors, some of these young guys I work with, but they don't know how to express themselves and be themselves. I always remember Craig Bellamy coming through, and I still speak to Bellas a lot. It's funny, all this bullying case around him, which is about to be blown out of the water, and that will be aired very soon. He's completely innocent of all charges. It's just that his demands now as a coach are the demands he put on himself, which is, this life is tough, guys. If you want to make it, you have to get to that code, and you're going to have to get there. It's not enough, and run and run. It'd be like dropping Diego Simeone into an academy. It wouldn't last 2 minutes. So I think what can be done for me, seeing talent. What is talent? Talent is what's inside somebody. You know, you can teach. There is Arsene Wenger's model at Arsenal. Let's get in quick, strong players, and then I will make them footballers. You can create footballers out of people. You can't give them that soul and that energy. And I'm always saying to the young players I work with who quote Lionel Messi at me, and I take great joy in spending a couple of hours finding the clips where Messi's spitting at someone, elbowing someone in the face, stamping on someone. I heard through the game that they tried to ban him drinking Coca-Cola at Barcelona, and he took great joy in clicking the can open and drinking it in front of the coach. This is a guy who stays authentic to himself. Take away the dribbling and the talent and all the stuff that God's given he's got, and he works on, he hones every day. There's an energy inside him which he's tough, and so bringing that out and nurturing that. I think where we lose talent is guys not being able to share how they feel. Between, so the conversation I needed at 18, I needed someone to call me in and say, okay, look, everything you've done to this point, you've been yourself, and wow, look at where you are. But it now starts. You're now in the big boys league. You're now competing against men for a place in the team. This is what it's going to take. I'm going to be on you every day. Share with me if you're feeling anxiety and nerves. Talk to me. We'll make sure that you're right and ready before you cross the white line. Anything you've been through, I've been through. That's the conversation I would love from a coach. Everything you've been through, I've been through. And I find it so ironic because a lot of my mates now are finishing their careers. Premier League, Championship. I've got a mate at the moment. He's doing his pro licence. He's had 12 years in the Premier League. I love him. He's a good mate. He was at my wedding, but I'd laugh if he's emotionally dead.
Yeah, it's a good point you make there. I mean, it's really interesting that you make that point. Because, I mean, you're quite an intuitive person, and you've obviously, see the world in that way. But I can think of certain players, at least in sort of my career as a coach, that if I'd sort of taken them one side and said what you just said there, they probably would have looked at me. That's not sort of undermining them, because obviously, a lot of players are open-minded and do understand the psychological aspect of the game, but there are certain players that would probably look at me like I'm from a different planet had I said to them, speak to me if you've got any issues and so on and so forth. But I think for me, really, sometimes it's a bit of a front too with certain players where they kind of put a barrier there. Where sort of bravado and I was doing a bit of work, consultancy work this year, and I'm not going to sort of breach confidentiality, but some of the young lads, they're 17, 18 years of age, and in front of their friends, they're all sort of, the banter is like in front. You take them to one side and you speak to them, and you see, I mean, here's a young lad who's sort of 18 years of age, and he's frightened. He's thinking, well, what do I do? The expectation on him from his parents, his family, his peer group, his girlfriend, and he's got his whole life mapped out. He's thinking, well, what if I fail and I don't make it? Because obviously, there's a chance that might happen. And I think it's a front, the behaviour's a front and all that sort of stuff. But, going back to what you said there about Messi, I mean, you get to that level and you kind of think, well, he gets away with a lot of things that you couldn't get away with, obviously, if you're a player starting out, and I think talent too is a big thing too. I mean, I like to think hard work is important, obviously, but some players have got that sort of exceptional, extraordinary gift too, which is a big thing too. But it's interesting, really, in terms of how you sort of turned your experiences to help young people, and I think that's really important because a lot of people, I think, from what I can see, they don't sort of do enough of that, Drew. They don't sort of use their subjective experiences like you've had and sort of turn that experience towards helping young people. For whatever reason, it might be a different career path, it might be not their style. But I think it's really important to have people like yourself that can connect to young people. Because you've been there, you've done that. And I'm not saying you have to sort of have had a career like yourself to be able to speak to people, but obviously, it helps a lot, I think, for young players to sort of see someone who's sort of, worn the T-shirt and that sort of stuff, really. And do you find that you've got that stronger connection, Drew? Because you can say, if a young player says to you, what do you know, type thing, we can say, well, you know what, I do know, I've been there myself. Is that a big help for yourself, or do you think that's not important?
I'm very strong on that. I think it's absolutely vital. When I started my first business 8 years ago, I went to Barclays Bank and I said, this is my vision, this is what I'm going to do. I want you to float me 10 grand overdraft. I want to, give me some working capital. I'd come out of the game, gone into rehab, I was bankrupt, but I had a vision for what I wanted to do. And the guy advised me was fresh out of business college, 23, 24. He couldn't see the risk. And he said, well, there's a lot of risk here. I said, no, for sure, no problem. And he was a million miles away. I said, and I asked him how many businesses he'd run. He said, well, he hadn't.
Wow.
And I said, so you're sitting here and you're going to advise me, or you're going to speak with me about what it takes to have a vision, see it, risk, gamble, and go for it, yet you have no experience of that, but I have a degree in it. Well, I don't care what your degree is. I want to know, what's your pain? Give me your pain. So, look, I've never had a conversation with a player, what do you know? What I do, and I do it in the corporate world when I work there, I'll sit with a client and I destroy myself for 5 minutes. I won't let them open, there's no reason I have to open their mouth. I go, this is me. Dribble, they've broken, they've nearly scored, a couple of people are on you, crowds on you, the manager's on you, you can see the sub warming up. We're not even 10 minutes into the game and your head's already going, I'm done here, I'm getting subbed. And so, my blessing is my curse. I am so sensitive. There wasn't a vibe I didn't pick on. I've been promoted 3 times, relegated 4 times, been in the England youth squads. I've seen everything. I've holidayed with Premier League stars who are mates. So there's very little I haven't seen. So everything I'm about is feeling, and I just go inside them quick and go, this is how I felt in that scenario, and then they'll go, yeah, that's exactly how I feel, and that's my greatest tool, really. The bit that I really think could do with changing is, look, most players survive the career, they don't flourish. Most footballers I know survive football. They don't fulfil who they are. They end up finishing the career. What it takes to survive is to shut down a part of yourself, become emotionally a little bit dead, which is why a lot of the lads' marriages suffer. I got divorced. Part of you shuts down. Now I think the FA has to change the A licence and pro licence, and they have to add in a 6-month, 1 year, where once you've ticked all the boxes, you can create a diamond and 11v11, you can see things quickly and change shape and all the tactical stuff that's important. Now we're going to dig into you, and we're going to, all the trauma and pain you've had through that career, Mr. X player, we're now going to get you back in touch with your feelings that were lost at 19. I don't care how much money you've got, I don't care how big your car is. A lot of my mates have got a lot of money and a lot of big cars, but they're emotionally dead, and I'm telling you now, they have no chance of being successful managers. They will get jobs because of their names, but they'll be gone quick. And then, and I don't blame the coach. I feel sorry for these guys. There'll be a lot of coaches out of work, managers out of work who, and I know a few. I was due in at a club to work with a guy, and he was sacked a couple of days before I was going in. That was start of April, and they were in a bad situation. And I feel sorry for the poor guy, because he'll go home and his self-analysis and self-reflection, and he'll really look at himself. I don't think there'll be any part of him that goes, I was never able to tap into the fear on the players. I was never able to unlock and see how obvious the answers were. Because I remember speaking to a couple of the players in that squad, and they were like, it's so simple, isn't it, Joe? It's so simple, but Gaffer just doesn't see it. The lads have gone. The lads have gone. Mentally gone. And yeah, so I think until that work's done, I think it's never going to, mental health's always going to be there, sporting charts, and the numbers are rising and rising. Only read in the Mail today that the PFA hotline that was set up after I came out of rehab, and now got this whole welfare of counsellors across the country. They're getting more calls in the last 12 months. I've just screenshotted actually. The numbers are off the scale.
Frightening, yeah. That's
off the scale.
That's frightening. That's not good, Drew.
No,
at all.
It's not going to change. It's not going to change.
Exactly. I just think for me, obviously these things are multifactorial, and it's not a simple solution to a lot of some of these problems that exist. But obviously we've got to start somewhere. And I think that people like yourself who are open and honest about things and can share the experience is a good place to start, because I think that there still is a stigma, whichever way we look at it. There still is a stigma around mental health, but more and more people are opening up now, and it kind of helps in the sense that you realise that you're not alone. You're not suffering on your own. Other people have been through it as well, and they're trying to get through it, and it's not easy in that respect. And I think that the football industry is one area that people hide it or try and hide it well, because obviously there's a lot of pressure in the game, but you're constantly wondering what people are thinking. And for a player, you're thinking, okay, what's the manager thinking of me? What are the staff thinking of me? And obviously, your sort of main aim really is to get a contract and stay in the game, and you do your best to do that. But there's not much pastoral support, Drew, I don't think, in the game, or at least people who you can really speak to about some of these things that are going on. And also the pastoral support that there is there, I think sometimes the players sort of lack a bit of the confidence in approaching someone, because they think, well, what if this person mentions what if I get judged, and it's not easy in that respect. And I think for me sometimes that you sort of look at things from the outside looking in, and sometimes I listen to players get criticised, and don't get me wrong, it is what it is, and it's a privilege to be a professional footballer and work in the game professionally. But that said and done, you see certain players getting criticised, and it's like a fine line for me, because I think that ultimately these are young lads as well, and I always think to myself, what, if your child was being criticised in the national media and on radio, you wouldn't like it, in the sense that fans have got a right to sort of vent their frustration and voice their opinion. But I think for me, Drew, at least in the last few years, it's always been there, but I think more so in the last few years, there's almost like a line that's sort of starting to get crossed as well, in terms of some of the things that are said about certain players. It gets personal and stuff like that, and there's no need for me in terms of I can fully appreciate you criticise someone for having a bad performance, and fans pay good money, they watch the game, but some of the things you hear on the stands, I think, wow, that's not good. It's a human being here, someone who's sort of experiencing certain situations in life. And did you ever find yourself, Drew, as a player, did you ever times yourself where you thought, wow, some of the stuff that's being said sort of got under your skin, or were you the sort of person who could block it all out?
I don't think there's very many who can block it all out, even the ones who say they don't. Most players will always look for the one bad comment about their performance. They get 10 good ones, they want that one bad one that validates their insecurity. And I think whilst you're right about the terraces, about Twitter, about all the abuse that happens, but that's not the stuff that bothers the players generally. And I know that the issue the guys have is in the clubs. I mean, look, Sean Dyche is a brilliant manager. What Sean Dyche has done at Burnley has been nothing short of incredible. What he's done there, what he's set up, the infrastructure, the philosophy. But I know two senior players who've sat in with him over the last couple of seasons and started to open up around a couple of their feelings.
Yeah.
And it hasn't gone down well.
Wow.
It hasn't gone down well. To the point where they've come out feeling isolated, feeling, now I'm being looked at that he's a bit, well, let's just keep one eye on him. Oh, and the minute he gives the ball away, there it is. He came in the office the other day and said, we can't really. So I'm not blaming Sean Dyche. I feel sorry that Sean Dyche was a lower league centre half. I played against him. I feel sorry for these guys. Like, he could be exceptional, but there's that emotional, that final part. Once he's got all the brilliant stuff which he has, the technical aspect, his discipline, his simple philosophy, all that brilliant stuff he does, there's that final missing piece, the ability to sit with a player as a player. And I had it with a manager that I played for, who's now in a very, very senior position at one of the top 2 clubs in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember sharing with him after an abject performance on a Saturday. He called me in on the Monday, said, "Big, what was that?" And I said, "Boss, I'm sorry." I said, I woke up Saturday morning, usually get out of bed 9:30 a.m. for a home game. I said, I remember sitting in bed 11 a.m. There's a thing with the girl I'm seeing. I know my contract's up at the end of the season. There's 14 matches to go. I probably need 6 more goals. I remember just feeling overwhelmed, and I rushed out of bed, jumped in the shower, came to the game, and I just had nothing. And he looked at me, he went silent, he goes, "You had nothing." He said, "You cannot think like that." I was 25. I remember going, I probably played 250 games by then. I was like, okay. He said, look, we go again tomorrow night, massive game. Are you telling me you don't want to play? I said, I don't remember saying that, boss. I just remember saying it's Saturday, that's how I felt. What I needed in that moment was him to go, rock back in his chair and go, yeah, man, I had that day last week. And I was like, really, boss? Yeah. Like, I said to my wife, I didn't want to get out of bed. I said, and I had it a million days, the player. But he actually made me feel that I am so strange and alien and weak for having those thoughts. So I'm going home, and I'm a 6'3", 90 kilogram lower league target man. Who had a reputation, who Mick Harford described as being one of the toughest players in the lower league. So how it doesn't add up. My needs were simple needs.
That's a great point. Really interesting stuff that you mentioned there, Drew. It's a great point you've made, and I think for me, some of the managers have got, with all the best intentions, they are what they are. I mean, they're good at what they do, and in that respect, but obviously this is a whole different ball game. Dealing with the mind as a whole requires a lot of expertise. Now, for all the good stuff that Burnley's done, also at academy level, youth level, they've brought people in and they have a role and they're doing well. I mean, I go to some of the conferences sometimes, Drew, the football conferences and that sort of stuff, and, they have these events, as you're probably aware, the events, the conferences, and I look around me sometimes, and I don't want to sound disrespectful here, because some great staff, some really, really good staff, they're really academic, they speak really well, they've got a future in the game, but I'm looking around me thinking, you know what, if I'm a player, if I'm a footballer, in my mid-20s or even early teens or coming to retirement, and I've got to turn around and speak to someone who the only education they've pretty much had is like that, just university degree, they've got the titles, they've got the letters amongst their names. I'm thinking, well, what can they tell me in respect to, like yourself, I've been there before, in the brink of bankruptcy and,
Sure.
all those things in life happen, the breakups, all that sort of stuff. And the reality is that I would prefer to speak to someone like yourself that I can level with, who's going to give me a good, honest appraisal of what's going on. Personally, I think that, there's a new age of personnel coming into the game. They've got a place in the game, but I think that we've got to get people in the game like yourself that you're comfortable opening up to. I personally if I was in the game, if I'd open up to somebody, I'd want to open up to somebody who, I could have some sort of relationship to, in the sense, okay, let's talk about the problems at home, let's talk about the breakup, let's talk about things that are off the field. If you need clinical help, obviously you get signposted there, because there's a fine line between clinical, I think, and performance. But I think that for me, the game needs more people like yourself who have had that experience for players to relate to, and that's sort of undermining. I don't want to undermine, people who are doing a good job in the game. They sort of, don't get me wrong, get the balance of academia as well too. That's important to the point. But why do you think that is, Drew? Why do you think that we're seeing this sort of new sort of age of personnel coming into the game that they're very well academic, very well educated in that respect, but life experience to do these sort of roles, I think you need people who've been through, situations too. And do you find that's the same case where there's a sort of, a new breed of personnel coming into the game to fulfil these roles that are really important roles, huge role to fulfil pastoral support, massive,
Yeah, I think while all the breakup stuff and relationships and money and all the stuff that this day-to-day life stuff that people go through is definitely a big part. My area of my gift really is working inside that, the football stuff, the training pitch, the feelings, the game day, what it takes to go and perform at your best. So that's where I live. But look, 7.5 years ago when I was doing my A licence, I worked in an academy. I took the under-14s for a year. That group of guys now, three of them are in first teams, and I still speak to one of them. And I had an incredibly successful year. We won 20 out of 21 games. The biggest thing was, and winning is important at 14-year-old, at 10-year-old level. I teach my daughter about winning. She's 7. What is winning? Winning is when you're absolutely on your knees and every part of you wants to go under. Whether you're doing gymnastics and you have to dig in, that's winning. You beat that voice inside. So we were beating that every training session, and we were just taking it onto a pitch and steamrolling teams. I remember going to Liverpool with our under-14 side, and we had a category far inferior. We beat them 4-0, ran all over them because they didn't live with our team spirit and our work. I was having constant running battles, staff watching my training sessions, telling the director of the academy he's not towing the line, he's not doing this, he's not doing that. On the way back from that Liverpool game, I bought all the guys cans of Coke and Haribos and sweets at a time in their life, and I was pulled in and said, look, they've all signed diet sheets, and I asked, there was 6 coaches in there, a couple of sports scientists, nutritionists, director of the academy. I asked them their experience of that euphoric feeling, and 8 miles, whatever it is in the game, left everything out there, dominated your opponent. There's no fear that comes near that. It's what we all miss when we retire. I said, crikey, there needs to be a reward for that. At 14, when I was 14, a can of Coke and some sweets, unbelievable, great, Snickers bar. And so the game was, why was it inundated with scientists? Well, scientists give us data and proof, apparently, evidence of situations. Where there's fear, we want more proof. I live in that little gap. I don't need, I'm the counter fear. I don't need evidence for my life. I've been on my knees. I've had games where I had no right. You know, in my book I talk about Paul Ince when he took over at MK Dons, rings me up and says, look, I've got the biggest budget in League 2, Drew, but I saw what you did in a struggling team last year at Buster United. I want characters here at Milton Keynes to come down and play against West Ham. It was a week before the season. I needed the contract. Now, I put so much pressure on myself. I'm like, right, I'm playing against West Ham's first team. I'm a League 2 player. I need to play well. I'm 28. I was terrible. It was my fault for the goal-ups and run off me. Ince comes in at half-time, strips a piece of me off. You haven't turned up. You've got 10 minutes, you're done. I'm 28. I remember going to the toilet cubicle, shutting the door. Now, I could have pulled a sports science and said, can you give me my stats for the first half? In possession, you were this. Out of possession, aerial duels. That would have been nice. I went in the toilet cubicle, shut the door, and every voice went, you are finished. Season starts in a week's time. You've got a mortgage payment coming out in 3 weeks. You're done. Absolutely. You're done. Go and ask them a question. Go and ask them, can they match your aerial dominance? Can they match your aggression? Stop trying to fit in and be Premier League-y, whatever that means. And I went and did it. Made one, scored one. Got a 2-year contract. I remember sitting there at 4 in the morning in a local bar. The landlord kept it open for us, sitting there, just trying to reflect on how. I had 10 minutes to stay on that football pitch. I hadn't done one positive thing. And in 45 minutes, I flipped that on its head. By doing what? There was no science involved. It was faith. It was trust. That deep down, all I had to do was trust who I was as a player. I'm not a dribbler. If I was a dribbler, I'd have gone and had the courage to dribble. So I think there's this overwhelming data and science because everyone wants proof that please show us how not to lose a game. Show me how not to get sacked as a manager. Give me as much information as I can.
Exactly. No, you're right.
Dangerous.
It is, and it's like I don't know if you've seen the film Moneyball, Drew. I'm not sure if you've seen it.
Yeah, I've seen it.
And there's a team in the UK in football that tried to replicate that. And I went to a conference one time, and I said, I admire you for sort of trying to use technology to its full effect. But the conversation some of the coaches were having were like, I thought, if you need if you need that to tell you what a good play is, something's got to be seriously wrong, Yeah. I think it's got its place, don't get me wrong, it's there, but when they make it like the fulcrum, you think, wow, seriously, Drew, if you need to be told by a piece of computer what sort of play you need, there's got to be something seriously wrong. I thought, goodness me, there are certain players that don't have the stats, but they lift the dressing room. I just can't explain certain plays, statistically. Exactly, the sort of players that bring the best out of everybody else, and that's the sort of danger, that sort of fine line. I think that sort of, technology is great. Don't get me wrong, I embrace it. Stats are great. I sort of look at them and that sort of stuff, and I think it's really interesting stuff. It's fascinating. The sports science is great. It's taken the game a long way in many ways. The sports psychology is great too. But, there's a time and place to sit in front of someone and do a performance profile. There's a time and place to say, you know what, I'll hold my hands up, I'm out of my depth here, get some clinical help. Or, you know what, let's have a chat about what's going on as well. And I think for me, it's sort of educating the staff to be flexible in their approach and think, you know what, the well-being is the key issue here. If the player's in a good place mentally, then there's a good chance they're going to play well. But life being the way it is, it's not easy. People go through breakups, they go through bereavements, they go through all sorts of stuff. And just because you're a player making, whether you make £1 million a week, you're still going through stuff. No money, is gonna. No, I mean, don't get me wrong. Obviously, finance is a great thing. It helps. It gives us freedoms, and it's a great thing to have. But no money in the world is going to sort of cushion the blow of a bereavement. Cushion the blow of a messy divorce, cushion the blow of stuff that goes on. I think sometimes, people fail to recognise that players, they're human beings.
I think in my experience of conversations that managers are having with players, I think managers are very good on that one. Yeah. I think I've got friends who've got autistic sons, and their managers are incredible with them. Look, if you need to have a day off, you just tell me anything. That care is there, but that's not the need. The need is not that. The need is to understand emotionally what it takes to cross that white line and somehow believe in yourself that you're good enough to go and play. And all you ask from, and every one of those managers must have had those feelings. And I think that's where Pochettino and Guardiola excel. Mourinho for many years did. I think he lost his way slightly, observing from the outside and hearing conversations. You can't stop being brilliant, and he was brilliant, and he is brilliant. He just lost his way like we can all do.
Yeah.
But it's the emotion. So I don't talk about mindset. I talk about soul set. I'm not interested in what... I want to get people out of their mind. Your mind is just your hard drive of information. I don't want to understand front lobe and cortex and vortex. I have no interest. No interest. Amazing the people who do. Amazing the guys that do. And we need that in the world. I'm inspired by very few people. Martin Luther King, Mother Teresa inspired me, Princess Diana inspires me, Michael Jackson inspires me with the gift that he had, and aside from some of the things that has gone on, the other things that amazing people. I mean, Winston Churchill was one, and when I came out of recovery, I started to look at Winston Churchill. I started to buy all the audio tapes, read the books, go to Blenheim Palace. He did a speech in Middle America 4 years post-war. And by the way, the war, as we know, decimated the world as we know it. Fear run riot. And his faith in himself and his core faith beat Hitler's fear. He did a talk in Middle America when he was virtually done in the political world, and he said the greatest threat to the planet in the next 100 years is science. Hitler had science and we didn't have it. He said we had faith, we had belief. He said we need scientists in the world, but we don't need a world full of scientists. I never forgot that line, because that's football. We need sports scientists, but we don't want clubs full of them. We don't want them to run things.
Exactly.
That's a line that stuck with me. I thought, now, what are you doing? Are you hiding when that ball comes to you? Are you half putting your hand up, or are you going, give me that ball, I've got to change this game? That's the emotional stuff. I mean, let's take Salford. Amazing. I know Chris Casper well. I nearly signed him at Bury a few years ago. I saw him recently. But I was at Rushden and Diamonds Football Club when Rushden we had loads of money and blew the conference away and we got into League One. I mean, we were second in League One behind Leeds. It was, and then the club now is nowhere to be seen. So Salford is very similar. Gary Neville did a piece on Raheem Sterling on Sky Sports. I remember it never left me, and he was amazing because he was really honest. He shared a story on Monday Night Football with Jamie Carragher and said when Raheem Sterling was with England, he was really struggling. It was before the Iceland game. They'd had a meeting with the analysts and everything, and he could see Sterling kind of lingering, as if he needed something. So he called him over and said, "Raheem, everything okay?" And he just shared how he was struggling with pressure and the media and the expectancy and his own belief in himself. And Gary Neville openly said, I reverted to type. I reverted to, no, you're a great player. The team's built around you. Just get on the ball tomorrow night. And Gary Neville, fair play to him for his vulnerability in front of the nations watching on a Monday night. He went, I didn't have the answers. Didn't have enough. I let him down. I couldn't go to the place that he needed me to go. Wow, I thought how honest, and he's absolutely right. What Raheem Sterling needed was Gary Neville to go. When I was at Man United, I had that feeling every day, and Raheem's eyes would have looked up, really? Every day. I used to think I was a fraud. Did you really? Yeah. I'm playing with Eric Cantona. I thought I'm terrible, and so, this is how I got through. Like just to be emotional, and it just struck me. I thought that is what I'm talking about. That is I'm not knocking Gary Neville. I was the same when I retired. I'm blessed that I went through rehab, recovery, and I was homeless. That made me look at that part of my life, and I don't know what the universe had planned for me. But I didn't last 2 minutes in the system, which is why I became a private coach.
And that's interesting you say. It's
the last 2 minutes.
Yeah, no, that's the thing, really. I think obviously the system, comes with constraints and that sort of stuff. And I think for me, it's an interesting point there about Chris. Obviously, congratulations to Chris. He's been not long ago with Salford. And I had the pleasure of working with Chris for a few years at Bury, Drewe, at the youth team and in the first team too. And we could have done with a striker like yourself.
I nearly signed for him. I ended up signing for MK Dons at that point.
Yeah. No, we could have done with a striker like yourself. I think that certainly 6'3" you could hold the ball up. But the point being, with the likes of Chris, Chris is a really passionate person, and he's a football man. He comes from a football family, and
very sensitive guy as well.
Absolutely, and I'll be the first to admit I've got one foot in both camps. Science, sports science, neuroscience. It forms the backbone of my work. But also on the other side, quite a spiritual person, and like he says, I don't think we know enough in science to make any firm judgments. We've got to have an open mind, and I think the point you've made there is the likes of Chris. After Bury, obviously, he's bounced back, and it's great to see him, in the game, doing what he does, and I think that I think in the sort of mould of Pochettino, Chris has got that sort of sensitivity in the sense that he really connects to the players in a big way, and the players obviously love him to bits. And I think a lot of it's down to the fact that you sort of drawn attention to it, the likes of a Pochettino, who openly at a conference. That was incredible. To think that a manager, to sort of to break down and cry and to see that. I thought that you'd rather see someone do that than bottle it up like a bottle of fizzy pop. And just, you shake that fizzy pop and eventually, it's going to explode at some point. And I think from the outside looking in for the players to see what it meant to him. And the sort of, the open and honest press conference he did as well too. He sort of come out with it. He talked about the game. And I think that's great, to be fair, for manager to do that. But we're seeing a bit more of that now. Whereas in the past, obviously, you've had the sort of type of manager, get on with it type thing, and so on and so forth. So you are seeing managers become more open in one respect. But in saying that, do you think there's still a stigma, Drew, if a manager, cries in the open, people are going to think, well, what's all that about type thing? Or do you think that we're sort of past and beyond that now?
There'll always be a stigma, there'll always be racism, there'll always be mental illness. It's the universe. But I coach in London, so I do 2 days a week with company owners and the senior management. And what finally one of the directors, after 6 months of working there, just started to break down a little bit in the boardroom the other day. I got a call from him that night, so I've just had the most profound day of my 18 years running this company, 120 staff. I said, what happened, man? He's like, I just put it out there. I said, what did you put? He said, me. I just said, I'm done, guys. And they all looked at me, they all looked up from their paper and pencils. He said, I can't do it anymore. I live for this company. You don't understand. I started this from my bedroom. We've now got this huge offices we got. But I carry this pressure. I've got problems at home. I got too many of you fight against my decisions. And he started going up and he started to break down, and someone over put their arm around him and said, I never knew you felt like this. He goes, guys, all I want is the best for this company. But I need you to be with me. I need you to. And he started to do what Pochettino does, what Guardiola does. They've had an incredible week. Staff who were going to leave. I'm going to fight with you. He said the whole atmosphere changed. He said to me, he goes, I think of all these business coaches I brought in, and they've had whiteboards and slideshows and 8-pot pillar models. And he said, I got you in the first day, Drew. I'm going to be honest with you, I was apprehensive. I've seen your stuff on LinkedIn, and I just thought something you did went straight through me. I thought, I'm going to call you, and we met. And I remember coming the first day, and I called you and said, okay, what's the plan for the day? And you asked me you said there isn't one. And I remember thinking, well, what? And I said to him, look, we've got a plan. Your PA sent me. I'm doing half an hour with you, all a short presentation. I've got an hour slots with 7 people. That's my day. I said, inside that, it's very simple. I'm going to ask them how they're feeling about this company, about what would they change, what would they... I said, here's what's going to change. If you throw them under the bus for them being honest enough to share with you, I'm done, I'm out of here. Don't ever call my phone again. I said, but if you want real change, you listen to what people are going to say emotionally, and you look hard in the mirror at yourself, and you say, is there some truth in that? And you start to move things forward. In my experience in football, when I opened up, whether it was a private psychologist who came in, they'd throw me under the bus, or they would say to the manager, oh, this is what Drewe Broughton said, and wouldn't potentially be strong enough to fight the manager and do what I did there and say, hey, if you take this information and see that as a weakness, I will walk out and never come back. What he's doing there is incredible, but they wouldn't probably do that because they were thinking, I've got this great gig at this football club. I don't care. I've lived under the stars for a week, sleeping in my car for a week. I have nothing but the truth. I don't care. I'm not here to network in football. I know a lot of people. I'm not here to nail anyone in football. I feel sorry for a lot of the coaches and managers. It's not their fault. The FA should be helping them with better emotional education. Pochettino has a gift. You don't need to educate him on it. Guardiola has a gift. I have that gift. It's a hell of a curse. I feel everything. I cry at every movie. I have my daughter 2 days a week now because I'm divorced. I walk past her bedroom. My new wife said to me the other day, why is your daughter's bedroom door open for like 2 days and it's shut? So I can't see in it. I cry sometimes. She's not here every day. And she knows me. She goes, Dad, I didn't even know you were feeling like that. It hurts me. Now, I feel everything, which is tough, but it enables me to go inside people pretty quick and get to a point there.
No, so, it's fascinating you say that. I think that, you're a really intuitive person, Drew, and, you're a strong character, and you're obviously a very strong character as well. I just think that, a lot of people out there would have that sort of fear of opening up, in the sense that what are people going to think, and all these things that go through their mind. And I mean, what would you say to people who are afraid of what people are thinking, or the fear that if I do open up? And I mean, is there anything that you'd sort of say to people?
It's a brilliant. Thank you. I think that's a great question. But you know why? And you probably share it is because I'm getting a little pissed off with it. It's Mental Health Awareness Week. I'm an ambassador for a mental health charity. I'm talking again on it tomorrow in London. This whole just open up. The FA have released something this morning. Just talk. What, really? To who?
Exactly.
I have to be very careful who I share with. I remember sharing my wife once. I had strong feelings in the week before that I wanted to kill myself. Now, I don't act out on those voices. I might have those voices again tomorrow. They will be with me till the day I die. I had voice in the game thinking that I just want to walk off. So we have to be careful who we open up to, and that's the great thing, because otherwise, in my experience, if we open up to the wrong person who can't emotionally go to how open we are, I would come away feeling ashamed of who I was. I would come away feeling more isolated, more alone in the universe, because I'm thinking I've opened up to you and you've made me feel really lonely. And I don't think it's as simple as just that. It's a hard one. I do get it. Like, we've got to talk more. I do understand that, and there is merit in that, but
no, it is a tough one.
Dangerous.
It is a tough one, and I was delivering a training course a few months ago at a corporation, and we sort of got talking about the fine line between mental health and between clinical and performance goals. And I sort of said that if you're in a situation where someone is really struggling, it's useful to talk to a point, but sometimes you can also be out of your depth, because obviously the person needs to see a clinician possibly.
A clinician, absolutely. I refer out a lot. Out. You need to know your boundaries.
Exactly, and the thing is, like you said there, it's one of them where, that's a really important point you've made there, a really key point. Obviously people listening, and it's mental health week and month, and I think it's really important people do get the right clinical help that they need. They might go see a clinician, it might not be the right one for them, or they might not use the right modality for them, but at least they're sort of in that sort of system going forward. But in terms of speaking to people, I think that's a great point you made, an important one. When they talk about speak to someone, well, you know, it's a dangerous one, because obviously not everyone's got your back, Drew. Not everyone's got your best. You know, and you know, I could speak to people, and I've been through my trials and tribulations as well, like we all have, and I know there's people out there that they almost like take delight in seeing you, you know, down and out. But also there's people out there that, you know, they might not say it to you, but then not only that, not just take delight, but also people they just cannot help you. They there's not much they can do, and it leaves you sort of possibly feeling worse than what you were before. And I think that's a really important point. And I think that for me, I was at a conference recently, a month or so ago, and I was talking about mental health in football, and I said, well, for me, it's all good and well, you know, putting the message out, speak, and that sort of stuff, but I really think that, you know, a lot of the signposting's got to be around getting people the help that they need, the right clinical help, talking to the right people, getting the right support network. It's got to be a top-to-bottom approach, you know, just throwing it out there and speak to someone if you're not feeling great and that sort of stuff. I think, okay, it's commendable that they're trying to get the message across, but I do really think it's such a complex issue that it needs, you know, some sort of structural reform from top to bottom, really, you know, going forward. And you know, the trouble is, I guess, for people is that, you know, it's great that people who are high profile have come out and spoken about the mental health issues that they're facing. I think it's great. It reduces the stigma. We've seen, you know, the likes of Serena Williams talk about her, you know, what she went through. I think I saw an interview one time on TV, or I might have read about when her sister passed away, and we've seen the likes of the, you know, many people talk about what they've been through, and it's useful, I think, in the sense. But the thing to bear in mind, Drew, people who do that in a different position to someone who's sort of going to work, struggling to pay the bills, in the sense that you're afraid to open up, because obviously you're worried if the manager's going to think something of you. You know, what do you do then? And that's a tough one, you know. It really is. To tell someone to open up at work, and you think, do I go in tomorrow and I've got my P45 for some excuse? So for me,
I fully agree with that. Yeah, absolutely. I'd never advocate that. The work I think about the season one of my players has had, and we sat down yesterday literally and went for some food and really reflected on an amazing year, and you know, he's probably going to at least quadruple his contract this summer, and we were looking at where he was in October. Unused substitute, ignored by staff. Now there was a period of injuries, and he forcibly got dropped into the team, and it was very much you're playing, but he's back in 2 weeks' time. Now, to this day, I say to him, do you understand the power inside your soul? That he went onto that pitch the next day on Sky Sports and was man of the match and scored the very next day, and he felt one of the lowest places he was at. And now this very same manager, within weeks, was all over him. But now at the end of the season, is like, you know, we went through that tough period together, and we got you through it as a club, and it's great. He just smiles and nods his head today. There's not one part of him that he's got nothing to say to that guy. That guy is done for him. He's dead to that coach and manager, and he'll play for them next year. But there's nothing left for them. They broke his trust. They hurt him. And if I was in a relationship with a woman and she hurt me like that, that'd be done. But you can't dump a manager, unfortunately. But he's gone through that, and we've talked about it, and he just understands now that I'll nod my head and I smile. I've got nothing from that guy. I just nod my head and I'll go and do my job. And what a tragedy! Because if he did a Pochettino or a Guardiola, you'd get more levels out of him, you know. And it's a great shame. So he's done it in spite of the manager, not because of, you know. And so if you're in a workplace, he can't go and open up to the manager. He tried a couple of times, and he was so very difficult. People got bills to pay and kids. I'd never recommend. It's very, very difficult. You just have to become, what I would recommend is acceptance, powerful word. You have to accept this is what it is.
Yeah.
Nod your head, get through it, be yourself, and engineer long term and move away from that.
Yeah, no, it's quite, it's a difficult one. I think that, we are and have moved along a lot the last few years. That, I think that, there's been some big strides done in those areas. That's for sure. There's still a long way to go. I think it's going to take, more people like yourself to do the work that you do, to really start moving things forward at a quicker speed. But it is what it is, and I think sometimes the sort of fine line, it's a tough one, because you sort of think, well, obviously someone's health is first and foremost the most important thing, and the travesty is really that we live in a world, Drew, I'm afraid that, it pains me to say it, in more ways than one. Sometimes, economic is more important than people's well-being, in the sense that, it's just the way the world is, and that's just life. We all got to get on with it the best we can. Maybe in the future, in years to come along, things might be a little bit different, but you kind of see that. And in football, there's probably no other industry where you see the harsh reality of sort of disposability, where you're everyone's best friend one day, and every manager wants on the phone and signing, and then the next day an injury, illness, or something goes wrong, and there's no one to be seen, and that's sort of obviously putting a bit dramatic, but the point being is that you really see it in the game. People see what they see on TV and the highest end of the game, and they look at the the players, but obviously for me it almost like highlights football, kind of, it sort of magnifies, it shows the world that we live in some sense, where the world isn't always fair. People put as much effort as in everybody else. Some people put a lot of effort in to their goals, to doing things, but you don't always get reward for responsibility and effort, and that's life, I'm afraid. But if you can find meaning out of situations, and I think you're an inspiration, Drew, because you found meaning at least from the outside looking in.
Lucky.
Yeah, and that's the big thing. And I think that finding meaning is a great place to start for anybody, in the sense that getting up in the morning, and we're all going to have good days and bad days, but if you can sort of keep yourself focused on the greater good, you've always got a chance to make an impact in the world.
I mean, you're absolutely right, Jimmy, but it's hard.
Absolutely.
It's beyond hard. Like Jurgen Klopp said to a young player that I worked with a couple of years ago, that the best players, he had him in his office talking to me, so the best players in the world run with pain, tackle with pain, head with pain, shoot with pain, get up with pain every day.
Absolutely.
This young guy rings me and says, what does he mean? I don't really know what he means. I said, look, he's not talking about the fact you've got a Range Rover and the contract. He said, he's talking about this, you've been let down by football. You're 17, and what have they taught you from 12? Tactics, some speed work, strengthened you up a little bit. They've not dragged you to the pain 2 minutes into a training session, stopped you after 1 minute and gone, come here, you're a great guy, you're a wonderful player, you could be whatever you want, but that, I am killing you if I let you think that is a sprint. I'm destroying you. I'm destroying your life. And that's how I coached them that year. It's like, I literally stopped sessions on simple things. Yet all around me on the AstroTurf 3 nights a week, it's like seals dribbling balls in the air and tricks and flicks. No. It's about preparing people for how tough life is. I have a wonderful job and a wonderful life today. Not a day that goes by where I don't wake up. I do gratitude lists every morning with my clients. We do them with each other. I've got players, young 20-year-olds, sending me profound gratitude. It's beautiful.
Fantastic.
But what it's taken for me to get here, I get messages, performance coach out of the university, can they shadow me for the day? So I don't really go anywhere. You can listen to my conversations, but unfortunately all I'm doing is talking about the pain I've had. I don't really know what you can get from me. It's like there's nothing to shadow. You can't rip off. It's me. But I do think, without doubt, the FA in football could add in 6 months, a year onto that pro life. I know pro licensed coaches who are in amazing senior positions in world football who are just so dead. They're cheating on their wives. They're not following that moral compass. They're dead inside. and
yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, I don't know if they'll ever change. We just keep, like you, Jimmy, just keep trying to do the best we can do with what we got. That's all we've got, man. Yeah.
It's been a fantastic. The show's gone really quick. We probably could have chatted for the next 3 or 4 hours. It's been a phenomenal conversation. I really want to, thank you for coming on board the show, and I'm sure the listeners have sort of, had a really powerful insight into certainly, your career and your thoughts, and it's been a great experience. So I really want to thank you, Drew, for coming on board the show.
Thanks, Jimmy.
And no doubt we'll speak again. Thanks, mate.
Yeah, I really appreciate you reaching out. Thanks, mate.
Bye-bye.